Hey, David, do you know what comes to mind when I think about organizational culture?
What? Say more.
You know what's coming. It's pickles.
Pickles?
Yep, pickles.
Pickles and culture?
Yeah, I know you don't like pickles very much, and that's pretty juicy. We'll see if we can turn you. Today, we're talking about pickles. I mean, organizational culture, what it means, how to do it well, how to build it well. Welcome back to the Shed Some Light podcast. This is episode 5, The Culture Equation.
Okay, so Shed, you like pickles?
Yeah, is this an intervention? Like, should we just get it out there? I do like pickles, but I'm not like some pickle freak. I just really like the analogy of culture to a pickle jar. By the way, two friends, Stephen Shapiro and Shane Feldman, were both in the UK and stumbled across Shedletzky's Deli, and they make pickles. It's SKY, not Z or ZKY. But for all of those wonderful Shedletzky's Deli employees and lovers out there, we don't yet have an affiliation, but happy to explore a partnership. We're just racking up sponsors, unofficial sponsors here, David. But yeah, there is a Shedletzky's Deli. So yeah, I love the metaphor of pickle jar to culture.
And what do you love about it?
Well, I mean, I first came up with the idea. I was working with Simon Sinek on his book, The Infinite Game, which is a great book. Highly recommend. It's actually right over here. And there's a story in The Infinite Game about a barista that Simon met at the Four Seasons Hotel in Las Vegas. He was doing a client engagement, and the client put him up at the Four Seasons Hotel. And we love hotels like the Four Seasons or the Ritz-Carlton, or enter your favorite boutique hotel or your favorite bed and breakfast or whatever. We love these places not because of the quality of the beds. Any hotel can put in a nice bed. We love these places, and think of like any retail or service-based place of work. We love these places because of the way that we're treated when we walk in. In the context of a hotel, we're greeted. How are you? Anything we can do to make your day better, right? It feels like a relationship, not a transaction. And so Simon was at the Four Seasons. He went down to get a pick-me-up coffee at the coffee bar, and he met a young, funny, charming barista who turned out to have the name Noah. And they spent like 15 minutes having this brilliant conversation. And Noah was helping out some other customers as he's also chatting with Simon. And Simon asks him, "Do you like working here?" And without skipping a beat, Noah says, "I love working here." If you're in my line of work, or David, you're in community work, like if someone uses the word love voluntarily, you're like antennae up, like what's going on? What's in the water here, right? Like is rational, love is irrational. Do you love your life partner? I like them a lot. Like that's an issue. Love, higher order. And so Simon asks Noah, what is it that the Four Seasons is doing that you would tell me, a complete stranger, that you love to work here? To which Noah goes on, very sort of stream of conscious, just says, well, multiple times throughout the day, managers, not even my own manager, they come up to me, they know my name, they ask me how I'm doing, and if there's anything I need to do my job better today, right? The only true way to have sustainable customer service is to first care for your employees, right? When leaders care for their people care for each other, their people then extend that care to the customer client, and then the client or customer takes care of business. That's the order of how, companies, organizations should work. Noah also says that managers will note that I took a fishing trip with my dad and asked me how that one was too. Now, Noah also volunteered in this conversation that he works down the street at another hotel in the very same job. And there he shows up on time, keeps his head low, spends his entire day doing everything he can not to get noticed by anyone, and leaves as soon as the shift is done. He collects his paycheck, and that's truly the only reason he works there is to collect pay from a shift. And he said the only time he's noticed at work at that other job is when he is noticed by his own manager and he's told what he's done wrong today, right? The only time he's noticed is you drew out of the lines, it's reprimand, you're made to feel less than, he's punished. He said, only at the Four Seasons do I feel as though I can operate at my natural best, mind blown. And as I was hearing this story for the first time from Simon, and I've subsequently heard it many times and have shared it with many audiences as I do work with Simon and team and share the Infinite Game and that content and story, it dawned upon me that culture is like a pickle jar. Because David, we're all wonderful cucumbers, right? We can all be crunchy and delicious and juicy to whatever our taste, hardworking, talented, ethical. But you can take a world-class cucumber, an award-winning cucumber, put it in some awful pickle brine, and you get an awful pickle, and you cannot blame the cucumber alone. You have to examine the brine that it's in. And the Noah story made it clear that you have the same cucumber, put it in two different brines, two different environments, two different cultures. You get totally different pickles. You get totally different people. In one environment, Noah is at his best. He's funny, he's charming, he's engaging, he's building a relationship, right? In the other environment, Noah literally would have been punished for his low customer utilization rate, and he would not have made a relationship and a fan who would subsequently, by chance, go on and share the story with literally millions, because you can look up Simon Sinek Noah or Simon Sinek Trusting Teams, and you will get this story, and it has literally been viewed by millions. That, to me, is the culture metaphor as it relates to culture being like a pickle jar. Hashtag mind the brine.
Mind the brine.
Mind the brine.
So this is great. I didn't have...
Are you now a pickle fan? You're all in?
I was going to say, I didn't have to consume a pickle to learn about the metaphor. But now I have a different connection to pickles.
Appreciation, yes. Yeah. You don't need to, you don't need to eat the result of the fermentation to appreciate the process of fermentation. So that, to me, is why culture is like a pickle jar.
So, now when people say, like, hey, do you like pickles? I'm going to say, no, but I like the pickle jar metaphor. Are you familiar with that?
Do tell. Do tell.
Listen to episode 5 of the Shed Some Light podcast. But here's
Beautiful.
the TLDR. So you also, in your book, you wrote about an equation.
Yes.
Related to culture.
So to me, yes. And this is the title of today's episode, the culture equation. So, and I've run this by a few mathematicians, and they're like, yeah, checks out, which is pretty cool because I do not consider myself a mathematician. I actually think there is a way that we could create culture scores using this too. So sometimes when I share this, I've gotten feedback that audiences are trying to figure out the math. This is what I would invite you to do as we share this, and we'll put up the culture equation on the screen as we do for those listening or watching rather on the YouTubes or otherwise. Is try not to figure out the math and try to understand the essence and the meaning of what we're saying. But I actually do think we could measure culture, the health of cultures using this equation. So to me, the health and strength of a culture is determined by the clarity of the organization's values and the degree to which they are behaved. Now, the culture equation is this. Culture equals values multiplied by behavior, and all of that is raised to the power of influence. Let me explain, shall I?
Yeah, please.
Or let's just go to the next episode. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening. No. Okay, we'll explain.
Grab your pickles on your way out.
Yeah, grab your pickles. Yeah. Ferment on, mind the brine. So to me, culture is in the how. It's how we experience, it's how we behave. And that's both for people inside the organization as well as those that we serve or those looking from the outside in. If you're, I just did some work yesterday with a large grocery and pharmacy chain here in Canada. I experienced the senior leadership team. There's a culture there internally, but it also permeates outside to vendors and suppliers, certainly employees at the store level and everywhere from the store all the way back up to the boardroom, as well as customers. Like that's our experience. Cultures and the how we behave, how we treat each other, how we reward and recognize. In our cultures, we get the behavior that we reward, we and recognize. We also get the behavior that we tolerate and enable. Now, the culture equation, the health and strength of a culture to me is determined by A, are there values that are explored, that are discovered, and that are articulated in a way that resonates, connects, makes people feel proud? And do we articulate those values in a way that we know what the behaviors are? This is why, there is an organization that many will have known that had these values: communication, respect, integrity, which is hilarious, and excellence. For me, excellence is my least favorite value because it's meaningless. Like, David, do me a favor for the rest of the day, more excellence, please. And you're like, yeah, what does he mean? Like, it's kind of meaningless. But if I take excellence and I will define excellence as do more of our best work. Ooh, now we're talking, because it is hard to do a noun or an adjective. It is easier to do a verb or an action phrase. Do more of our best work. Well, that means that I should know what my strengths and limitations are. You should know what your strengths and limitations are. We should know what business we're in, what our strengths are, what products and services we offer, and what we shouldn't be offering. I know when I should step up and when I should step back. I know when you should step up and when you should step back. And that's how we bring excellence, or doing more of our best work, to life. So yes, values to me are best defined when they are articulated as a verb or an action phrase, and we have behaviors underneath so we know what it looks like. And this is also not about uniformity, because you can have diverse global organizations, and you can be headquartered in Canada or the US. And let's just say, just because you're headquartered in Canada or the US, well, are you headquartered in Toronto or Vancouver or Albany, New York, or Albuquerque, New Mexico? Like, there's also different subcultures. So it isn't about uniformity of those values. This is how we bring this one to life here. I think it is setting what the values are, but we can bring them to life in unique ways, even based upon subcultures within an organization, by department or region or whatever it might be. Thoughts, questions so far? Tracking, making sense?
I'm tracking, yeah. I'm trying to do my best work here.
You're doing some good listening. Thank you. So that organization, by the way, communication, respect, integrity, excellence. Drum roll, please. That was Enron. Enron had those values. And if you're unfamiliar with Enron and the huge financial and accounting scandal that they suffered under the, I will say, unethical leadership of their former CEO, Kenneth Lay, those values were literally posters on a wall. And the test of your culture is, are your values being lived in the halls, virtually or physically, or are they simply wallpaper? Are the values just words that we put on the back of our business cards, on the bottom of our emails, in slide decks, on screensavers, or on the walls, or are they actually lived? That's the first piece. Clarity of our values, knowing what they look like in our behavior. And then now, culture equals values multiplied by behavior. To me, it's multiplication, because if you have clear, strong values that we know what they look like in practice, great, you have a high value score. But anything multiplied by a 0 is 0. Worse, anything multiplied by a negative is
Negative.
a negative. So if you have the values, but you don't live them, anything times 0 is 0. You have nice wallpaper, but not a healthy, thriving, or strong culture. Worse, if there's a say-do gap. If you say these are our values, and you don't bring them to life, you don't behave them, you don't reward and recognize people and provide feedback, coaching, discipline if necessary, if people behave outside of the value set, anything multiplied by a negative is a negative, and you are more likely to have a toxic or deleterious culture. This is where I think we can actually get a culture measure. What's your value score? And then what are your behavior scores? Based on self-evaluation and evaluating others, or vendors, suppliers, customers evaluating that organization, as well as the employees. So values clear. We know what they look like in behavior. Are they behaved? And then all of it is raised to the power of influence, because we've said this before, as a either uppercase L or lowercase l leader, your whisper is a shout and your tiptoes are stomps. The more influence one has in the context of a culture, of course, an organizational culture or societal culture or community, the more influence one has, whether by authority, seniority, or simply you behave as a leader does and people follow, your influence bears weight upon the health and strength of that culture. Your individual values and behaviors matter more if you have more influence. It means something more if a C-suite leader doesn't behave it or does behave it than it does a junior person we hired last week, unless they were handpicked by a senior leader. Then their behavior bears more weight because they have influence. That is the culture equation.
Taught in grades 1 through 6 these days?
Maybe not, but maybe coming to an MBA program near you. But yeah, to me, that helps me understand culture. And I actually do think that we can begin to measure the health and strength of cultures based upon that culture equation. Could be fun. Anyone listening, if you're really good at organizational metrics, assessment, measurement, insights, any of that, come at us. That would be a fun project to do. If we could actually create like a culture score, would be pretty cool.
And that's email us at team@shedinspires.com.
Yeah. Yes. Or drop a DM or a comment. But yeah, team@shedinspires.com if you want to help us bring the culture equation to life.
Yeah. So I think so we're talking about an interest around kind of really creating metrics and a score. And until we're like, while we're doing that, I think that's also important to be able to showcase some of this like qualitative stuff and the difference versus the quantitative side. So the number stuff might be coming, but before then, we'll focus on some distinctions and differences between some of these terms that we might hear from different people. So the first kind of distinction that I would like to break down is healthy versus strong. Healthy culture versus strong culture.
And this is an insight that this is part of the beauty of writing a book is, if you write a book on leadership or organizational culture, or anything like management or any theory, it's like this very vulnerable act of like putting something out, saying like, I might disagree with myself, or this work might mature more. And this is one of them where I didn't have this insight when I wrote the book, but as we've been talking about the culture equation and working with organizations on it and teams on it, one distinction is a healthy culture is more important than a strong culture. Because if you have a strong culture that isn't healthy, that's like a bodybuilder who builds a muscle so strong that it literally detaches from its insertion point. Strong, but completely unhealthy and ineffective. A strong culture that is unhealthy is stubborn and immovable. And you can get in trouble if you have a strong culture that isn't healthy. A healthy, thriving, dynamic culture means that you are willing to evolve and be dynamic and bring your values to life in ways that are needed in the moment and in the context. Reacting to whether it's a COVID-19 pandemic or the burgeoning of AI and how to do AI in a way that is actually aligned with your organizational values and beliefs. So healthy means dynamic, that you are You do everything from the perspective of how to bring the objectives and strategy of the organization to life. Yes, strong can be rigid or toxic. Healthy means that it has evolved a dynamic and all in the power of bringing to life what the organization needs.
And then you talked a little bit about influence before, but what's the difference between influence and power?
Power to me is positional. So everyone has some influence. Some of us might have more influence than others based upon either the role we are in, the power we might have, or simply because we are influential. Whether that's by personality, charisma, influence. Charisma can be dangerous because charisma can mask competence. Charisma doesn't mean competent, it just means charisma. um, but yeah, power to me is more positional. It's more authority based. Influence means that you have influence, and sometimes you can have zero power, but a lot of influence. If you have power, you certainly have influence. But I'm also, this is this capital L, lowercase l conversation we've had. So capital L leader, you have power and influence. Lowercase l leader, you don't necessarily have power, but you do have influence, and people follow because you behave as a leader does.
And speaking of the L's, let's do one more distinction. Liking and loving. You talked a little bit about loving before, but how do we with Noah? But say it again here. The difference between loving and liking culture.
Yeah. So loving is irrational, like is rational. I love my wife. It doesn't mean I like her every single moment. Like there could be tension or disagreements or just yesterday morning we were getting the kids ready for school and I had too much going on and like she asked me a question. I wasn't ready to receive the question. Like I didn't like her in that moment or in that exchange, but I love her and I'm committed to her. And I think that can be true of culture as well. And our experience of working in organizations and on teams, it's not about liking all the things all the time. Like is kind of a more shallow emotion, but it can be love. Like there can be hard times, there can be challenging times, but we can be committed to each other, committed to the work. I'm also leaning into, we have a mutual friend, Bree Goff, and she has this whole body of work. Oh, the book is upstairs. Today Was Fun. That's her book. I have a bunch of things. And her, like, she's a little bit more like, work doesn't always have to have purpose. Like, you can just, like, have fun and enjoy it, which I'm a fan of. But to me, when we love a culture, it means that we feel connected to it. It helps us grow and become better. And that we don't have to like every moment of it to appreciate it, find gratitude, and even love it.
Like it, love it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know how we
But
always say like
it's
love it. When people say like, "What do you think about that?" I love it.
yeah, 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 yeah. But I do think, and especially for a, I think this is available to anyone, but for also a younger generation of folks who are in the workforce and growing within the workforce now, I think, the like baby boom generation was defined by loyalty and put in your decades and get the gold watch. Well, then there's what is it, X, who saw their loyal baby boomers get laid off. And Gen X is like, nah. And Gen X is a little bit less loyal. And I think Gen X as a generation, I think works to play. Like, it's like, I work so that I can have life. And I think that's a healthy perspective. And then there's the Gen Z millennial where I think we want purpose and meaning. But I think there's what is it after that? Gen Alpha or what comes out? Is it millennial, then Gen Z?
I'm following your lead on this. There's so many to
All
keep
right.
up with.
So, I mean, like so I'm now, uh, I'm nearing 40 and I think I'm Gen Z or millennial, whatever. But the generation younger than me, here, let's figure it out. What is younger than Gen Z? No, it is Gen Z. It's millennial, then I think Gen Z, and then Gen Alpha, which is my kids. Millennial, then Gen Z. So I think there's a healthy sort of reckoning that you do a lot with your portfolio career podcast and this gig economy of the traditional job is shifting, and we're finding more of a gig freelance community and not necessarily a corporate, you know, work mentality, which I think can be healthy. Um, but the thing for me and what I'm trying to say is, for this podcast, we're not saying that if you're listening, that you have to love your job. No. Like, no, that's not fair. I don't think that's a healthy or fair standard. I want that to be your experience. And I want you to feel as though that you love your career journey. But what I do think should be the standard is that you are well led, that you are compensated fairly, that you're treated with dignity and as a human being, and that for anyone in a position of leadership and for anyone who has influence, how can we make cultures work better and be anything but toxic and not cause distress, but be a place where people feel that they can contribute, they can grow, they can be taken care of, and they can take care of others. So I just want to say out loud that it's not the expectation that you have to love it, because sometimes life happens and you do a job because it provides the appropriate pay, flexibility, whatever you need for your life and your family right now, and that's okay. We're talking about how culture can be a force for good and how we can design and cultivate culture in a way that it does more good than harm.
How do you think that an organization can define its culture? Like we talked about how like there might be different types of people there, different that have different reasons why they're there, and like, but how do you define it?
Yeah, if you're sitting here being like, okay, I want my team or my organization to have better, healthier, thriving culture. Like, where do I know where we are now, and how do we do it better? All these things that we're talking about so far: leadership, trust, team, culture. You never arrive; you're always arriving. These are infinite in nature. They're dynamic. They change with the times. So the question is, can your culture improve and get better? The answer should always be yes. Because as soon as you're like, no, we're good, and you sort of let the foot off the gas, culture will happen. Culture is inevitable, like the wind. The question is, do you care to do the work to try to define it, try to make it organic, try to steer it in the right direction? And so when I do this work with organizations, there's a few exercises that I do. I do think that it is valuable to have some sort of objective perspective, whether it's the use of a tool or a guide, and we're working on some things in the background, or a facilitator, whether they're external to your organization or external to your team or department, because you can use an internal resource. Or you can try to do this work on your own and see how far you get. But it's hard when you have skin in the game and when you have subjectivity. But these are a few of the exercises. One is you can reflect upon, for the people on your team or in this culture, what have been the best teams that you've been a part of and what have been the worst teams that you've been a part of. And you can think of the specific people and the specific moments. You don't need to write down their names, but you can write down the qualities and even the stories that come to mind on the best teams that you've been part of and on the worst teams that you've been a part of. And you can share your best and worst list as a team and begin to like make sense of the stew of people go like, oh yeah, like, yes, I agree. And there's alignment, and you can sort of craft what's the culture we want based upon our previous experiences. When it comes to the worst team side of the list, that's where you play opposite game of, if it's like, well, on the worst teams that I was a part of, there were political landmines that you didn't know you were on them until you stepped on them. Well, that means you probably like to make the implicit explicit, or have it be part of a team where politics and ego and credit taking and all that is low. If on the worst side, it's like there were fiefdoms and talking behind people's backs, well, you appreciate transparency and inclusion and belonging. So you can play opposite game. So that's one exercise: best team, worst team, and then see the common themes from the people on your team. There's two other questions that you can explore. I just did this with a team yesterday in a trust and culture workshop. Trust and culture, you can't have one without the other. That's a nod to Love and Marriage from Married with Children, for those of you watching at home. Thank you very much. So the two questions that you can explore are what are the specific stories that make you feel proud to be part of this organization or team? I love the approach to culture from a very anthropological approach of what are the fables, because we're a fable-based species. I think that's one of the reasons why the Bible is the best-selling book ever, because we learn through stories and fables, and we can pass down lessons and learnings from the past, from history, from generations past through fables. And so a really fun way to bring a culture to life and give it more definition and even test it is to talk about these are the specific stories that make us feel proud. And by specific, I don't mean like we do holiday parties well. It's like, cool, what was the holiday? What was the party? Who was there? What happened? What mattered about it? Get to the level of specificity as if you're sharing stories at a bonfire with some friends, right? So in those stories, you bring the culture to life through a fable, and you can also sort of reverse engineer and figure out what are the qualities and themes, especially that recur across multiple stories that make this culture unique. With the team I was working with yesterday, it was evident they already had like 4 cultural pillars, and a lot of their pillars were represented really nicely in their stories around adding value and connection, being authentic, developing self and others was great. But there were also some fun ones like finding the funny. Like at a really senior level, they were able to laugh and make things fun, get a lot of work done, add a lot of value, but also have a lot of fun as they did it. So through those stories, some of the qualities of what makes that team unique was solidified and even put and articulated into clear language. The last question that I'll often ask, and this is something that I will do and I've learned from my work at Simon Sinek when helping teams articulate purpose, is if this organization or team didn't exist, what would be missing in our world, or what would be missing in this organization or department or whatever it might be? That's another fun one where you can figure out sort of why do we matter? What matters about this team? More of a purpose rather than a culture question, but that can be valuable as well.
I like it. I mean, that reminds me a lot about like, you know, just any type of work that you're doing, whether that's a blog post or a podcast episode. It's kind of like, will they miss you if you're gone? You know, like, does it matter? And when it does, that you're in a good spot. If it doesn't, like, you can work on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. One is I've heard, and I do believe that a true test of leadership is that if you're gone, can things still go on? And if the answer is yes, it means, either A, you're so ineffective, but the other version of that story is that you sufficiently empower. But I do think you bring up a nice point of A, is the brine generative, additive, productive, or deleterious? And is your participation in that culture generative or deleterious? And it's not like, I often get this question, especially with a speak up culture. What do we do with the naysayers, or what do we do with the people that always look at the glass half empty and are always bringing up problems? And my response to them is, well, like, A, at least they're speaking up, and there might be validity. You know, they're using their voice because they feel it's safe and worth it. You know, sure, there can be room for some coaching, but we really need naysayers, and we need people who point out what's not going to work, and it should be balanced with hope, optimism, what can work. But yeah, there are people who can bring up concerns or the negative and still be helpful, effective, generative to the culture.
I like how you brought it back to the brine.
Yes, it's all about the brine.
You're like, by the end of this podcast episode, David, you're definitely going to know brine and pickles. Okay.
You will be pickled. Yes. Signing off and sufficiently pickled. Yeah.
Before we sign off, what else do you think we need to head on?
I think there's one really good piece around middle managers. I know in preparation for this episode, you gave a reread of chapter 7 of Speak Up Culture, which is called Cultures Matter. And I'm putting words in your mouth now, but there is a thing you noticed around highlighting that middle piece. Do you want to speak to that, and I can add in context as well?
Yeah, I think that like the line in the book that stood out to me was that culture and organizational success often live and die in the middle.
Yes. So there are multiple ways to bring culture to life. There are multiple ways to change culture. You can change it top down. You can also change it bottom up. Um, uh, and hopefully you meet in the middle. Now, when you're at a senior role, the more senior you get, you are at risk of getting further and further away from the truth. I believe we've spoken about this. But those folks in the middle, management gets a bad rap. And I think we've said this before on the show as well, that they're sort of in the zeitgeist, management bad, leadership good. And I'm like, no, like we need both. Leadership is one and management is A. And it's not one and two, like it's one and A. Management is about dealing with complexity. Leadership is about creating simplicity and vision and moving ahead. And those folks who operate in the middle of the organizations, they get dealt a bad hand. They often have the most work. They are newer into leadership roles. They're leading people and often leading junior people or leading people who maybe have been around for a long time. And they have the short end of the stick. They have a ton of work. They have a ton of responsibility. They're supposed to get their work done and lead and manage effectively and help others get their work done. And, oh, by the way, we often give them the least training, tools, and supports as well. And to me, change lives and dies in the middle. You can talk a brilliant game of the future and of the vision and where you want to go, but you're limited by how much you can bring that to life based upon how well it cascades down and throughout and permeates throughout an organization. Those managers and leaders in the middle are the only people in the organization who have multi-directional influence. They can influence up. They can let senior leaders know the breakage, the fallacy in their plans, feedback, help make their plans and ideas more effective and actually resonate. They can certainly influence peer-to-peer, side-to-side, and help create momentum and change effectively. And they certainly have influence down within the organizations and those who they formally lead as direct reports. So figuring out ways to support managers. Now, we may not be able to send them on the same amount of leadership retreats that we'll send senior executives on, but we need to find ways to support them. And we need to realize that they get dealt a tough and bad hand as having to do the work and lead others who do the work as well. But yeah, that middle manager piece is so fundamental for how we actually make culture real, effective, and change successful as well.
Boom.
A couple sign-off items.
Yeah. Before I go eat some pickles.
Yeah. And let me know how that goes. Yeah. And you're like, never again. But hey, yeah.
I'm going to UK. I heard
Nice.
there's a good deli out there.
Shedletzky's Deli with an SKY. But not all pickles are created equal. Just remember that, David. Not all pickles are created equal. Hey, do us a favor. Drop in the comments if you're a pickle fan. What's your favorite pickle? And what's your favorite brand of pickle? Again, not all pickles are created equal. Mind the brine. Just because you define a culture doesn't mean that you can set it and forget it. If anyone who knows that infomercial with a guy who would like put a big turkey in that convection oven, you have to consistently work on, improve, also adjust your culture to the ever-changing dynamic environment that we're in, and do that exercise of what are the stories that make us feel proud to work here. Do it on repeat, because the true test of the strength and of the health of your culture is how many more new stories you're coming up with, you're creating, you're sharing. If the only stories you have are from years back and you don't have recent ones, watch out, your culture might be dying on the vine. The true test of a culture, how many more new stories are we creating? Are we a part of? Are we hearing? Are we sharing? And in fact, CEO Mark Hoplamazian at Hyatt Hotels now asks in every meeting, who has a story of why we do what we do? Who's the story that makes us feel proud to work here? He's constantly on the prowl for new stories because he views his role as being the chief purpose and culture officer. Every single C-suite role, we know what they do based upon their title. What does it mean to be a CEO? I'm an executive. I think it should be the chief vision and leadership officer. Culture is changeable. It is not fixed. It is dynamic. And yes, in our cultures, we get the behavior that we recognize and reward. We get the behavior that we tolerate and enable. We hope this has been valuable. This has been another one of these like foundational, let's take a word that we all take for granted and create some definition and contour around it so we can actually do something with it. We hope the culture equation resonates. We hope that you now look at pickle jars differently. And with everything we do here at Shed Some Light, we hope that this episode, as with all of our episodes, helps you lead better, helps you know who to follow better. And next, we're going to dive in and talk more about feedback conversations, how to have hard conversations. That's where we're going ahead. David, final words to you, my friend.
I will be giving you feedback offline about this episode. So that's a little sneak peek, a teaser for our next episode on feedback.
Ooh.
So,
Ooh.
No, this was a lot of fun. I feel like we covered a lot of ground and I learned a lot, and I hope people did as well. And so let us know what you think, what you took away, and yeah, what kind of pickles you like. What are you about to say?
Thank you for joining me as always, David, on the journey. Thanks for embracing the brine and the pickles. And if you are interested in doing some work with me and the team on how to define, discover, articulate, and bring a healthy and thriving culture to life, this is work that we love doing. So please do reach out. You can do so at shedinspires.com or team@shedinspires.com. Thank you, David. Thank you to our awesome team at Brand Crumbs. We'll see you next time. And until then, keep leading, keep making it safe and worth it for the people around you to speak up. Crunch on, mind the brine, ferment on. This has been fun. Thanks all.